All right, so what we have here is a setup for a bypass flow test. So coming out of our pump, coming over into the inlet side before the orifice, we have a pressure gauge teed in parallel. We have a flow meter to see what is actually passing through the orifice, and then out of the flow meter is going to come back into tank. So when we fire up the system, what we want to do is remember to have the gauge backed all the way off, the restriction backed all the way off before we start it up. So as we can see, the pressure is very minimal. All the flow is passing through the flow meter and returning back to tank. So we're going to try and start always these tests at a minimum pressure. And we would chart them. So as we see, we'll have a fixed RPM on our pump at 1725 RPM. We see the schematic on the left-hand side there. And what we're going to aim to do is see and set our pressures as it shows on the chart there. So right now we see 125 PSI on our gauge. And we see 1.25 gallons per minute or 4.5 liters per minute. As we start to turn this up, we're going to increase the pressure to the next increment of 300 psi. We're going to do this gradually. And see what the number changes to check our pump performance. So we see that it stayed at 4.5 liters per minute. We'll use liters per minute as it's going to give us our most accurate reading, being that there's more numbers. So what we're going to do is continue on to the next increment that we showed on the chart there. So we're going to see that as we fill out the chart, we're going to see 4.5 liters per minute on the 125 and 4.5 liters per minute on the 300 psi test. So as we take a look at the chart, we can see what's next for us to look at is to build the pressure to 600 psi. So as we continue to increase or restrict the flow at the orifice, we're going to increase up to 600, and we're doing a performance test on the pump. I'm going to take a look again, and we see a slight drop off the 4.5, but not quite to 4.25. So let's call that 4.4 liters per minute. You can see on the picture there, it came off the 4.5, but marginally, not enough quite to the next increment. So what we're going to notice on this one is that 900 psi, as per our chart here, we're going to see that 900 psi is where our relief setting is, and that's to make sure that we protect the pump. So we're going to aim to go just below that relief, and we're going to read what the pump performance test would be. So once again, building up that pressure by causing the restriction and building up close to that 900 psi. We can just hear the relief valve kicking in, so we're going to stay under where that relief valve would be. Just under that relief valve. So what we see now is that the pump performance is dropped down, as you can see on the gauge, just dropped down from that 4.4 spot, and now we're close to 4.25 liters per minute. So we can see that we have a 1/4 liter per minute drop in our flow rate through the course of the test. At this point, you would be able to take your flow at your highest point and divide it by the flow at the lowest point, multiply that by 100 to get your volumetric efficiency on your pump bypass test. So the formula there, right on the side of the board. You can see the flow at your highest would then be 4.25. Your flow at the lowest would be 4.5. We can divide those two, multiply them by 100, and that's going to give us our volumetric efficiency.